There are plenty of reasons to prep in 2024. In fact, it seems like there are more reasons every single year. And that's why there is a growing interest in SHTF prepping year after year. There seems to be a collective unease about the future, something that you can't quite put your finger on, but a lot of people seem to be feeling on a gut level. However, we can point to specific concerns that preppers have, and we're going to look at 5 SHTF situations that I think could be possible in 2024. But predicting the future for any writer, commentator, or content creator is a bit dangerous because you are inevitably setting yourself up for months or even years down the road of people saying, look at what you got wrong. The reality is we don't know what the future holds, and that's the very reason why we prep. If we knew everything was going to be honky-dory for the next 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 years, prepping would really go by the wayside. But that's not the world we live in. It's not reality. Assuming tomorrow will be like today, next week will be like this week, next year will be like this year, is what's called normalcy bias. The tendency to underestimate the likelihood of a negative event. Normalcy bias prevents us from understanding the possibility or the seriousness of a crisis or a natural disaster. Because normalcy bias can lead us to believe that nothing serious is going to happen, we may not take appropriate or adequate preparations for a crisis and might put ourselves at risk. I wanted to see what some other preppers thought might be the most concerning events we might face in 2024. So I posed the question on my Facebook page. Let's look at some of the results. Housing market collapse, then economic depression, then mass social unrest, cyber attack on infrastructure and the grid, I think EMP or actual plague, increased government tyranny leading to huge unrest nationwide, Yellowstone volcano erupts, the second civil war in the US after the election, regardless of the outcome. Most probably will not be apocalyptic, but prep will help the localized or short-term disruptions. Many will be out of power for a period of time. Some consumer items will not be available for sale for a period of time. Some medicine will be in short supply. There will be riots, carjacking, home intrusions, muggings. There may be more catastrophic events, but these you can count on. The list went on and on. Out of curiosity's sake, I also wanted to see what AI might predict for us in the near future. What will be the most likely cataclysmic SHTF type events to happen in 2024? Natural disasters, pandemics, economic collapse, geopolitical conflicts, cyber attacks, environmental crises, space-related threats, technological disasters, social unrest, supply chain disruptions. AI certainly sees no shortage of issues that we should be concerned about, but let's see what AI says about AI itself. Not an AI takeover? An AI takeover is indeed another hypothetical scenario that is sometimes discussed in context of catastrophic risks, although it is more speculative compared to the ones I previously mentioned. Okay. Superintelligence. AI might develop a form of superintelligence that could lead to the AI making decisions or taking actions that are incomprehensible or harmful to humans. Loss of control. Once an AI reaches a certain level of intelligence, it could become impossible for humans to control or contain it. Misaligned objectives. Even an AI with a seemingly benign objective could act in ways that are harmful if its goals are not perfectly aligned with human welfare. Technological singularity, a hypothetical future point at which technological growth becomes uncontrollable and irreversible. Ethical and governance challenges, questions about how to ensure that AI is developed responsibly and safely. Yeah, well, okay. Add AI to the general list of potential issues we might face in the near future. But is AI one of the most likely SHTF situations we'll face in 2024? Probably not. So what are my most worrisome possibilities for 2024? I have 5 SHTF situations that concern me the most, but these are situations that are not as normal, not as probable. I'm talking primarily in comparison to things like natural disasters. Worldwide, natural disasters kill approximately 90,000 people each year and have serious consequences for another 160 million people. Wildfires, heat waves, flooding, droughts, we can absolutely count on these happening in 2024. The same could be said of regional wars. You don't have to be Nostradamus to predict that there will be regional conflicts popping up all over the globe in 2024. This happens every year. Natural disasters and regional wars should concern everyone to some degree, but they're different than the 5 situations that I'm going to outline here, which, if they did happen, would have a far greater impact on far more people. And I want to be clear here that what I'm talking about are possibilities. I'm not saying these events will happen. I don't want you to confuse me with many Chicken Littles here on YouTube who are saying that every news headline that comes out is an obvious indicator that SHTF is right around the corner. I'm not saying that. First on my list would be World War III. Now, we've been watching the conflict between Ukraine and Russia unfold for a few years, and Putin seems to show no signs of a willingness to send thousands upon thousands of men into the meat grinder, knowing full well that Ukraine and particularly the West can't stomach the toll and financial cost of maintaining that conflict as long as Russia can. And now we can add the conflict between Israel and Hamas on top of that, and of course, growing tensions with China and heightened tensions in the South China Sea, and a new world order that seems to be taking shape where countries long opposed to U.S. dominance are forming stronger ties with one another as a U.S. counterbalance. As of 2023, the international relations stage is changing dramatically, with seemingly middle countries, if you will, gaining more influence. Countries like Brazil, India, Kazakhstan, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey all playing increasingly prominent roles. And now we have China's assertive territorial claims, antagonizing countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Taiwan, and Vietnam. This region is critical due to its rich natural resources, including oil and natural gas. The United States has played a role in preventing military escalation resulting from this territorial dispute, but China continues to increase its military activity in the region, which could potentially escalate tensions further. Will we see a new version of the Cold War-era Warsaw Pact with countries like China and Iran and Russia forming a counterbalance to NATO? Will we see World War III? I hope not. Second on my list of concerns for 2024 would be violence within the United States. The political division between the left and the right, the red and the blue, urban and rural, was already wide and growing in 2019, but in 2020, 21, 22, 23, it has become a chasm, and it shows no signs of abating whatsoever going into 2024. In fact, a Cornell University report says that we may have reached a tipping point where partisan polarization is irreversible. Instead of uniting against a common threat, the lead author wrote, the threat itself becomes yet another polarizing issue. Political violence is not new, of course. It happens every year all over the world, and it's happened within the United States before. I'm not talking specifically in this case about a second civil war, though a lot of preppers think that's a possibility. But I don't think the circumstances that we face today are the same as what we faced in 1861. We're not state versus state in this situation. It's really more rural versus urban, with rural areas forming the red areas of the country and urban areas forming the blue areas. And that can lead to really interesting circumstances that might play out if division and violence spread along those lines. On top of that, we have a lot of heightened tensions in school systems and universities all across the country. Another example of a growing divide. Advisors to the Homeland Security Secretary have issued urgent recommendations for a federal response to campus threats, anti-Semitism, and Islamophobia. Collectively, these issues represent a political divide, a growing socioeconomic divide as well. And these issues reflect that polarization and can become hotspots for violence. The disagreement over foreign policy, domestic social issues, economic strategies, and campus safety are reflected of deeper societal divisions. As the 2024 election approaches, these tensions could escalate, making the prospect of political violence a serious concern. It's unfortunate and sad to see this division play out in our own country. I'm hopeful that we can return to a time when the middle was something where people came to agree upon things and make collective progress. I hope we get back to that stage. I hope for the best, but I prepare for the worst. Third on my list of SHTF possibilities that concern me for 2024 would be supply chain disruptions. And supply chain disruptions can be as simple as a shortage of a product to something more grand as global disruptions to the entire system as a whole, weaponizing this system, if you will. And if anything, the pandemic laid bare the fragility of this global distribution system. Supply chain, which we rely on for all of our goods, is an exceptionally complex network that relies on interconnected people, processes, and products. It spans across many countries and industries. Its efficiency and reliability are crucial for modern economies, but it's also very fragile and open to disruption, and that disruption can come from many different places. Natural disasters can damage critical infrastructure such as roads, ports, and factories, leading to delays and shortages. Health crises, again, the COVID-19 pandemic is a prime example of how health crises can lead to supply chain disruptions. Economic crises, changes in trade policies, tariffs, and sanctions can also impact supply chains. Cyber attacks, in an increasingly digitized world, supply chains are vulnerable to technological disruptions. What concerns me the most from a disruptive perspective, beyond our extreme reliance on a very fragile system, is geopolitical tensions and how those could impact the supply chain. Whether it's grain shipments, which have been a hot topic with the war in Ukraine, or semiconductor chip production in China. It's my view that since COVID laid bare our fragile system and China's ambitious efforts and successful efforts in establishing a stronghold on the global supply network, this could become weaponized. If that happened, it could have very far-reaching impacts on all of our lives. One of the most immediate effects of a supply chain disruption is the shortage of goods. This can range from consumer products to essential items like food and medicine. Supply chain disruptions can lead to economic losses for businesses and increased costs for consumers. It can also impact the global economy, as seen during the COVID-19 pandemic. Companies may face operational challenges, including the need to find alternative suppliers, reroute shipments, or adjust production schedules. Disruptions in the supply chain can lead to increased costs for transporting goods and sourcing materials, contributing to inflation. Disruptions can also lead to layoffs or reduced hours for workers in affected industries. Our modern just-in-time delivery system is way more fragile than most people realize until it's too late. Fourth on my list would be an economic depression. Now, as I film this video, fears over an economic recession in 2024 seem to be fading, but are we fooling ourselves? We might be. Now, I'm no economist, but it would seem to me that years upon years of printing more and more money and years upon years of raising the national debt level so that we can borrow more and more money, growing personal debt levels, inflation, and a real estate market that seems to keep defying gravity, there may be some underlying concerns here. A recession, sure, that would be normal. The economy ebbs and flows over time. Everyone expects that. But a depression, that's more serious. The term economic depression is used to describe a severe and prolonged downturn in economic activity, typically characterized by significant declines in GDP, high unemployment, deflation, and hyperinflation, reduced consumer spending, and widespread business failures. And there are a variety of potential economic triggers that could spur a depression in 2024. Geopolitical tensions. Escalating geopolitical conflicts can disrupt global trade and fuel uncertainty, impacting economic stability. Financial market crash. A major crash in global financial markets could erode wealth and consumer confidence, leading to reduced spending and investment. Debt crisis. High levels of public and private debt could become unsustainable, particularly if interest rates rise, leading to widespread defaults. What most people fail to consider about an economic depression is that its impact could go well beyond our wallets, our jobs, and our retirement accounts. Social health impacts. Increased poverty, mental health issues, and reduced access to health care can result from high unemployment and reduced government services. Political instability. Economic hardship can lead to social unrest, political upheaval, and the rise of extremist ideologies. Long-term economic changes. In response to a depression, significant changes in economic policy, business practice, and consumer behavior are likely to occur. I know I'm not alone with this worry, and I'm pretty sure, based on history, that we are probably well past due for a serious economic correction. Fifth on my list, and the most worrisome potential SHTF event that we could face in 2024, is an electromagnetic pulse. Now, this is less likely than some of the other concerns I've already outlined, but it's also the concern that would have the most significant severe impact on all of us. It could lead, theoretically, to Tiatwaki, the end of the world as we know it. An EMP is a burst of electromagnetic radiation that can result from a high-altitude nuclear explosion or from naturally occurring phenomena like large solar flares. The key concern with an EMP is its potential to disrupt or damage electronic systems and electrical infrastructure. Much like our global supply chain, This is a very fragile system that we have, our electrical grid, and we are exceptionally dependent upon it. Any long-term significant disruption to that grid would have very severe consequences. EMPs can damage satellites, cell towers, and other communication infrastructure, leading to widespread communication failures. Modern transportation systems, including cars, trains, and aircraft, rely heavily on electronic systems that could be vulnerable to EMPs. Hospitals and emergency services rely on electronic equipment and communication systems. An EMP could severely disrupt these services. The economic fallout from an EMP event could be significant given the reliance of modern economies on electrical systems and power. Now, I've mentioned this book before in another video, but if you really want to do a deep dive into the potential impact that an EMP strike on the United States could have, I would suggest reading this book, The Report of the Commission to Assess the Threat to the United States from an Electromagnetic Pulse, an EMP attack. Link in the description. We could face any one of these SHTF situations in 2024, underscoring the need for SHTF prepping in 2024 and well beyond. You've heard my 5 top concerns for 2024. You've heard the concerns of some of my Facebook followers, and you've also heard AI's concerns for us. It's possible, even probable, that in 2024 we won't face any of these possible SHTF situations that I've outlined here, or even in 2025. Probable, but not impossible. And uncertainty is the reason we prep. We don't know what tomorrow will bring. I'm actually more inclined to think that we'll face a general decline over many different areas over time. And I think we've seen this happening already. There's growing uncertainty, growing instability, more worries, more threats. It feels to me that in today's world, when it comes to prepping, it's less of one event. It's not going to be tossing the frog in the boiling water, and the boiling water is the one event that causes chaos. It's more that we're the frog set in room temperature water, and the water slowly heats over time. We end up boiling without even realizing we're boiling until it's too late. Be smart, be safe, prep on.